Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I am Grandmaster Shaman and today we have the grand finale, the top 20 anime of all time on my list. Now these 20 are not in any particular order, technically. I tried to order them best I could in terms of how consistently I felt like they were at the top. So some of these towards the bottom, I'd say definitely aren't like number one, for example, such as number 20. But that doesn't mean they're not in my top 20. They're definitely in my top 20. It's just not necessarily number one. So, really, I'd say out of all the anime on this list, from the looks of it, the top. Mm, roughly the top 12 anime on my list are going to be basically tied for number one, and they all have specific reasons for that. But the anime franchise that I put at the very end, the very top spot, has a little bit of an unfair advantage, and we'll talk about that. This is going to be a longer video because it is my top 20 anime of all time. So why not let me at least tell you a little bit about the show and why I like it as much as I do. So we'll start with number 20.
裏切りの夕焼け厄介に絡みつく汗を切り裂くようにしてマシンは叫ぶ歌うように Blow out loud 無口な
So do da 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 is a show about the mysterious goings on in basically Ikebukuro, and I gotta say that this one, like as I said before, isn't gonna be my number one. It never is my number one, but it definitely fits in the top 20 anime of all time. The separation between and Grave of Fireflies is actually pretty massive, and I'd say pretty much the top 20 anime have a huge bump over the other 20 or 80 anime on my list. Durarara is about this guy who comes to Ikebukuro and a lot of strange things happen there. It's absolutely wild and there's never a dull moment, and basically he create kind of accidentally creates this kind of, I don't want to call it a gang, but it's kind of like a gang called the Dollars, where a lot of people join this group and they talk about stuff, and it's a really complicated storyline to say the least. Several characters, well, two characters on my 150 top anime characters list are from this show, and the characters really make this show what it is. I mean, if the characters were a little bit different, it wouldn't really matter as much, in my opinion. And I gotta say, I really, really, really like this show. Um, Not to mention the fact that it has several seasons, and each season seems to add something more to the show, and you get a pretty satisfying ending, all things considered, as most of the plot points are relatively tied up by the end of it. So, definitely a show that you guys should check out. In fact, all of the top 20, I think, regardless of whether or not you like the genre, you should definitely check it out, in my opinion. But we're going to move on to a newer show at number 19.
たった一つたった一つのたった一人たった一人の私はここ
So, Ancient August Bride just finished airing at the beginning of the year, and, well, actually, it finished airing in, March? At the end of the winter season. And we already kind of knew what to expect with the OVA series that happened a while ago, but this time with a fully animated 24 episode series, not to mention an actual budget. My goodness, not only does this show look amazing, but they were able to fit so much into this show. It's absolutely wild. God damn. The lights. Hey. It's absolutely wild how much they fit into this show, and I gotta say that it is beautifully crafted, beautifully put together. The characters are absolutely amazing, and it really starts off with this girl who is basically on the edge of committing suicide. She has given up most of her life, and this guy says, well, if you've already given up, why not just spend your life for someone else? And so she agrees to it. I mean, she doesn't really want to live anyway. She might as well use what time she has left to help someone else. So basically, she gets sold voluntarily in an auction, which she is sold to this great Magus. And the Magus is essentially trying to make her not only his bride per se, but also his successor as a Magus. And the story is absolutely well done as you see the character go from being suicidal and not caring about anything to her affection towards the Magus and her actual the enjoyment that she has now that her life isn't quite as intense as it was before. Um, I gotta say that the story is absolutely well done in every category, and it's got that nice fit, that nice mix of romance and action, and great character development. Absolutely terrific storyline as well, in my opinion. Um, as we kind of see um, this girl become uh, a Magus, essentially, helping so many people, and becoming not only well liked, but having a higher opinion of herself over the course of the show, as she learns the world that the Magus has been encompassed in. So we're gonna move on to number 18. So another show that's relatively recent, runner-up for Anime of the Year not so long ago, Re:Zero. Now everybody should know this show because there's the whole Rem and Amelia huge fight going on. Though I'll admit Rem is winning quite handily. However, I am on the lesser side. I think Amelia is by far better than Rem, but don't get me wrong there. But this story is absolutely well done in my opinion. Well, I mean, I'm kind of saying that a lot, but the story revolves around this guy who is transported to a fantasy world. We haven't heard that anywhere before in our lives, but the difference is when he dies, he respawns at a random point in the past. Basically checkpoints, if you will, and he remembers everything that happened before, but no one else does, and so his actions after his death basically can change the entire future of everything. But he knows kind of what is going to happen in a sense. So we get this story of him continuously dying, and not only the mental strain that it would have, as you literally feel yourself dying over and over and over again, multiple times in different situations, and he's able to use his prior knowledge in order to help him do better in the next future and try not to die, etc., etc. And we get to see a lot of how that affects the people around him, how one choice can make a certain character fall in love, for example, while in a different reality, in a different future, his lack of choice will make that character want to kill him. It's kind of a wild experience, and definitely something that is kind of unique to the genre, which we don't really see that often with isekai shows. because they get transported to another dimension. A bunch of chicks fall in love with the guy, and or he's OP as shit. Like that's usually how it works. Um, that works for a lot of anime. What he's OP at is miscellaneous nonsense. It differs per show, but usually he gets a bunch of chicks and is fine. But this show really does a good job. And sure, there's two main love interests, but um, the fact that he always has the one in mind, the better one in my opinion, it definitely helps a little bit. As it doesn't really take away from the fact that they have, the whole women surrounding him type thing. So moving on now to number 17. So we have another movie here, and until recently, 2 years ago, I believe, this was my favorite anime movie of all time, Wolf Children, and I just absolutely love the story. Now, don't get me wrong, based on the beginning, no, I'm not like a furry or anything. Don't calm down, guys. But it's mostly after the birth of her children that things get really interesting. As she moves out to the countryside to take care of both of the children, as they have trouble being able to stay in human form, as they kind of have the mix of human and wolf transformation ability. Um, and it's just a great show about a mother who is doing everything in her power to make sure her children survive in the only way that she can manage, not to mention the fact protecting them from being exposed, being experimented on, being, bullied for the fact that they are creatures that at this point the world doesn't even know of. It's those type of things that really make this show set apart from a lot of other shows, and just the entire course of the show, there's a lot of feels, there's a lot of kind of relatability, and there's definitely something there that sets it apart from every other anime show or movie, at least in regards to the ideal of motherhood and what it is, and that's really what this show is all about. So we're gonna move on now to number 16. Well, if you haven't seen Code freaking Geass yet, I don't know where you've been. But the show about Lelouch v Britannia, the 99th Emperor of Britannia, all hail Lelouch, revolves around him and his ideal to save the world. So, giant country, empire, if you will, of Britannia. He is the basically 99th Emperor of Britannia. Though 90, what is he in line? He's like 40 something in line, whatever. But he has some massive daddy issues basically, and he wants to stop his father from treating Japan like garbage and essentially trying to take over the world. In order to do this, he basically becomes an alternate persona called Zero, and he leads a basically terrorist organization to try and disrupt the entire the country. He does this by obtaining a power called the Geass. His power allows him to basically command anyone who looks into his eye to do anything that he wants, but he can only use it once per person. So that's the big key here, and I gotta say that this entire storyline, the diplomatic issues, the nightmare frame fights, if you like, Gundams or any sort of mech fights, you've got that. You've got a little bit of romance in there. You've got some crazy diplomatic and war-related stuff. You got pretty much everything in this show. It's kind of wild. You even got the high school life for absolutely no reason. Um, they have it all. And the ending is known as one of the best endings in anime history, which, with the announcement of Lelouch of the Resurrection, may or may not be completely erased, and we'll leave that discussion for another time. But with the new season of Code Geass, you never know. So moving on now to number 15. So Psycho Pass is set in a world where people's mental states are basically recorded by a digit number, multiple digit number. The higher the number, the more unstable their mental state is. And it revolves around this girl who basically joins the JSDF, the Japanese Self-Defense Force, and tries to help people who have high psychopath scores, hence the name, or psychopath coefficients. Is that I think that's what it's called. She's basically trying to help them to lower their score and become more mentally stable. Obviously, there is a major plot point towards the middle about the main series antagonist, where this guy has a psychopath score of 0, yet he is murdering people and they have to stop him. That's basically what the show is about. Now, I've got to say something real fast about this show's scenery and production, because it is absolutely amazing, and it's one of the best shows in terms of visuals outside of shows like the Fate franchise by Ufotable. The show is absolutely well done. The music is terrific. The scenery is really well done, and not to mention a very interesting plot and story about this kind of murder mystery dystopian world where everything is decided by the coefficients and what the score is that it reads you, and what happens with that. So it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy, and definitely something y'all should check out if you haven't already. Number 14.
知らない言葉を覚えてゆくたび面影の中手を伸ばすのだけど一人ではわからないこと。
So another new anime that came out recently called Violet Evergarden, and I was kind of debating putting this higher on the list because of just how well done this show is, but it's so difficult. Once you get to this high, there's so many great shows out there. It makes it so difficult to put some over the others, and so this one ended up at 14. But I gotta say, this show about a girl that basically was used as a weapon of war, now the war is essentially done with, and her commander, the person that she had basically lived with, had passed away during the war, and so now it's the post-war, well, what do I do now? What does someone who is trained specifically for combat, who has no knowledge of really the outside world, who has no social skills, who has nothing to offer, do? So basically, one of the colonel's friends takes her in to his company, and now his company is essentially writing letters for people, because most of the people at the time are basically illiterate, they can't read or write. It makes a lot of sense. So she joins this company and she wants to try and figure out what people feel, who they are, how to become more human, could you say? And this story revolves around her trying to obtain that goal, and of course, struggling through life without the person that she had been living with for her entire life. So that's something that definitely interest me. And the way that they did it was really, really well done. You see the kind of slow progression. It wasn't like a 180, and it wasn't like skipped like in Land of the Lustrous, where the entire character development was just skipped over, glossed over, and you just see kind of the end result. You know why, but you don't know the development. In this case, you see the development really, really, really well done, and you don't get that a lot in anime nowadays. Um, it's something that really is absolutely terrific, and while I would love to see more of it, it's one of those things kind of like Code Geass where they don't need more. The ending was just perfect, and they don't need to add any more to it. Of course, getting more isn't necessarily a bad thing, like in Code Geass' situation as well. Maybe the third season of Code Geass will turn out to be decent, but again, the ending can stand alone. It could be by itself, and it is really, really, really well done. It was such a struggle trying to debate whether or not to put this one higher. So now we have number 13.
Time has come to listen to the crying of their puppet souls. 君がそんなにもっと楽して行き詰まった未来と愛す Words are strong, head is strong, scatters run and fall. 偽りのcontact every
Well, this show doesn't have a dub like every other show on this list so far has. It is definitely something that I've been another one that was very difficult to place because what it did was very unique and different from a lot of other shows. Basically, you have the isekai shows where the main character is transported to a fantasy world. However, in this case, it's the opposite. People from the fantasy worlds created by humans come to the real world and wreak havoc on the real world. And recreators, what really makes this absolutely amazing is that it is based on real anime characters. Obviously, they can't use them because, of copyright infringement and stuff like that. But they base all of the characters from the fantasy worlds as actual people from anime and whatnot. Sometimes even multiple people, where you see like the main chick being a mix of, say, Asuna from Sword Art Online and other characters as well in terms of her looks and appearance and Asuna's fighting style, for example. This show is absolutely amazing. The main character is kind of an aspiring I think he's into manga, I believe. I don't quite remember if it's manga or anime, but either way, he's trying to develop a story of his own to get out there to the world. And while he's researching, other anime and stuff, because obviously, he's got to be a fan if he even wants to do it in the first place, he accidentally brings this chick to his world, though he doesn't really know how he did it. And multiple characters from other worlds begin appearing in this central location. A person from, kind of an SAO fantasy, fighting one, and then you've got a magical girl, and then you've got, a centaur knight, and then you've got this mysterious person from an unknown anime or manga that they just don't really quite understand. Now, this character is also based on a number of different characters, but she is basically trying to destroy humanity because of, she's very in tune with her creator, and she believes that it's humanity's fault that something happened to her creator. So we kind of see the struggle of not only these magical people going into this real world, but also how they struggle knowing that their entire world has been created by someone else. People that they knew and loved died because the author just made it happen. And things like that. Some of them, might want to kill their own creators, the writers of their books, just because they maybe killed a friend, or maybe because they don't want to have their lives told in this world. So it's really interesting and definitely worth checking out, whether or not you like dubbed or sub anime. In my opinion, definitely something worthwhile. As we move on now to number 12. Now, this show is getting a new season that's currently airing. I believe it's about halfway done, called Steins Gate Zero. But Steins Gate, I mean, it is one of the most popular anime of all time. I feel like most people watching this show I feel like most people watching my video right now have probably watched it. And if you haven't, I mean, it is legitimately one of the highest rated and most watched anime out there. And with the addition of Steins Gate Zero, based on the visual novel that came out for the PlayStation 4, and I believe it came out for the PlayStation Vita. I don't remember for sure, but it's basically about this guy who found a way to send text messages back in time. And by doing this, he can essentially recreate the entire future. The difference is he doesn't know when the future changes. He completely remembers one straight timeline. It's like his character jumped timelines and he doesn't really realize it yet. So that creates problems, obviously, because some of the previous text messages that he sent back in time change outcomes completely. And on top of that, it causes people to even die in some situations and create these dystopian futures and whatnot. Not to mention, the whole time-space continuum nonsense. But it's basically how he goes about figuring out how to use this power and then realizing that he needs to undo everything. And it's a really, 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 really good anime and definitely worth a watch in my opinion. As we move on now to number 11. So Mirai Nikki, also known as Future Diary, another show that most people have watched with the most famous yandere character of all time. Not the first, but definitely the most popular yandere character of all time, Gasai. Yandere, of course, meaning obsessive to a almost insane effect. Not all yandere characters actually kill people, but they're all obsessed with someone to the point of insanity, essentially. So we've got Yuno Gasai, who likes the main character to the point where she follows him home from work or from school. She, constantly keeps tabs on him, and essentially what happens is they are summoned to a kind of death game, basically, because we have a lot of those actually, but this is one of the first ones, one of the earlier ones anyway, where the winner becomes God. And both Yuno Gasai and the main character are, part of this game. And what happens is all of the 12 people keep some sort of diary of some sort. So basically, the main character, keeps a diary on, things that he sees, and then Gasai keeps a diary about Yuki and, etc., etc. So, future diary, of course, means that their diary is now filled out several minutes or even further in advance. So they get to see what is going to happen to them in this future, and they have to try and change it, especially when it says dead end, which means that they're going to die. Or somebody's going to die, potentially. So, it's a really interesting story, and it essentially boosted the Yandere popularity through the roof. And then basically after that, we got the Yandere Simulator. We got all sorts of Yandere characters, and of course, the one that I'm really excited for in Happy Sugar Life that comes out later this month. I've read the manga though, so it's not like it's going to be all that surprising, but I absolutely, absolutely love the main character, who's also a yandere, who is obsessed with a younger girl. It's not, kind of legitimate love. It's more of a kind of big sisterly parental love, and to the point of an obsession where she has to keep tabs on this little girl at all times. And it's really, really good. But that would probably never have happened without Mirai Nikki, without Yuno Gasai, without the original Yandere queen, basically. So moving on now to number 10. We're cracking that top 10 right now with one of the top romance anime of all time, Toradora. In my opinion, probably the best tsundere character out there, Taiga Aisaka. And basically the story is about how Taiga is in love with this guy who works on the student council. And our main character is in love with Minami, I think, the red-haired girl. And both basically they have decided to team up and help the other to fall to basically get their love interest as kind of a working collaboration. And over the course of the show, they work together, and a lot of stuff happens as they try and basically make the other person's love interest fall in love with them. One of the biggest problems I have with a show like this, and for instance Golden Time, another one that's kind of similar, is that the opening kind of ruins everything. It kind of reveals a lot about the actual story that's going to happen, type of thing. Because we're meant to believe one thing, but then the opening shows us, well, I mean, that's not going to last for long because this is going to happen, type of thing. So the opening is a little bit, especially the second opening. But by the second opening, you already know, everything that's going on, everything that's kind of happening. And this is another one that has one of the better endings out there, but also one of the most bittersweet, I guess you can say, endings out there. It would have been nice to have one more episode to see what happens directly after the actual ending, but this show is absolutely well done, and it really takes a lot of serious problems and makes them not only relatable but understandable for a lot of people. And it really, I mean, the romance in it is absolutely terrific, and I don't want to say too much without spoiling anything, so if you haven't watched it already, go for it. So we move on now to number 9. So Assassination Classroom is another one that most people have watched by now. I feel like most of the ones in my top 12, there are going to be a couple that aren't nearly as popular, but not too many. Most of them, my top 12, should be watched by most people, which is kind of surprising, all things considered. But Assassination Classroom, basically about this guy who's a world-class, kind of murderer, basically, who, through experimentation, has been given supernatural powers, and for whatever reason, he wants to teach a high school class. And so the government has told the high schoolers to try and kill their teacher, because the one who kills their teacher the class will receive rewards for killing their teacher. And so thus begins the assassination hunt of Kurto Sensei, their teacher. And over the course of the show, we kind of get to see their assassination attempts, and everything that how they kind of train to assassinate Kuro Sensei. Not to mention the fact that Kuro Sensei not only has supernatural powers, but he's actually a really freaking good teacher. And you kind of get to see how the entire class develops because of Kuro Sensei, but they have to kill Kuro Sensei because not only the government told them to, but there is some sort of potential anomaly that could disrupt or even destroy the entire planet. So definitely watch that one if you haven't already, as well as, I mean, you should pretty much do with all my top 100, let alone the top 12. Moving on now to number 8. So this one it gets kind of intense. You wouldn't think so, because I'm going to tell you what's going on. So basically, the 4 main characters of this show are kind of mer people, I guess. They're humans that live underwater. They have a veil called an Enna that surrounds their entire bodies, allowing them to breathe and live underwater without dying from pressure or lack thereof oxygen. And the school that they go to is closed down, so they have to go on to school on the surface. But there is this huge argument between surface people and the water people about everything. Like, legitimately everything. They just kind of hate each other for every reason known to man. But something begins to happen as there's a special event called the Ofunahiki, which is where the water people and the land people come together to celebrate the water god and ask for his blessing. And there is the potential that the Ofunahiki will not happen, because there is the huge disagreement between the water people and the land people. And not only that, but something seems to be wrong, as, well, there's a huge potential tragedy on the horizon, especially if the Ofunahiki doesn't happen. And so these 4 characters try to convince the land people to do the Ofunahiki. The second half of the show is after the Ofunahiki, after something went wrong. Either the Ofunahiki didn't happen, or something happened during it, or whatever. You get the gist. And sure, that doesn't sound like the most exciting thing in the world, but this show is actually amazing. Not only does it have some of the best visuals of any anime outside of Ufotable that I have ever seen. The the reflection of the sun off the water, everything that goes along with that. It's kind of difficult to see it without getting like a Blu-ray version or a watching it in the highest definition that you can find. But it's really, really, really well done in terms of the visual and music aids that you have to an already interesting plot line. Not only that, but the romance angles in this and the middle section that leads to the absolutely wild and very interesting second half of the show. And not to say that the first half of the show isn't interesting, because it is, but the second half of the show was absolutely like, it was very unpredictable that these things would happen, and it's very, very well done in every manner possible, in my opinion. Najiasu is definitely one that everybody should watch, in my opinion. It doesn't have a whole hell of a lot of action or anything, but the storyline is incredibly well done. The romance in it is also incredibly well done, and not to mention the tragedy, the intensity, and the love dodecahedron is absolutely terrific as well. So we're going to move on now to number 7. So From the New World is another one that really drew in my attention the moment I saw the trailer for it before it came out. And this show is about a world where basically espers have been given power. At first, things went pretty smoothly, but due to an incident, people became wary of people who have powers. And because of that, basically secluded Esper-powered individuals away from the rest of society. But these Espers kind of got upset at that, and let's just say the human race didn't turn out all that great. But this turns out to be set way later, way later, where they're an entire tribe of Esper people. They all have kind of strange abilities, and they're in a village that is all about how people need to coexist and work together and whatnot. But some things start to happen that really get the main character and the main character's group of friends wary of the situation. At first, it's just one of their friends suddenly moves away. Someone that they grew up with, and before going to basically high school, if you will, they suddenly aren't there anymore. But everyone forgets. Everyone doesn't realize that this person is gone. And then it's another person disappears. And it's that society is kind of odd. And then they found a magical creature that stores information that tells them about the past and how they're connected to everything that happened with the tragedy of the Espers killing off most of humanity and whatnot. And it takes place as these characters discover that this society that they have grown up in might not be as safe and as happy as they feel like it is. And on top of that, there is a group of creatures. What are they called? The rat people? I can't quite remember what they're called. But they're people that kind of look like, well, not people. They're rats. They're rats. They're basically giant rats. And they don't really talk all that much, but they run into one that does. And it's kind of like seeing the beginning of the human race. as these rat people that have been basically oppressed by this Esper village and shorted because they have no power, how they sort of gain this kind of understanding about everything, and how they start to use weapons and wars between rat colonies. And it's really, really insane. It's really, really intense. And the model of the society is based on certain baboons, and it's very difficult to explain. There's so much going on in this show, but needless to say, you should watch it. It has a lot of romance in it. They kind of explain that as the society is built on a society of baboons that share love with each other, and so you get to see how the society is kind of very touchy-feely, how they express emotion through physical contact, how it doesn't really matter who you are either. So then you get, you kind of get where I'm going with that. And then it's really difficult to explain the whole thing, but you should definitely just go and watch it. If you like, romance, if you like, action and excitement, there's a lot of that, Espers, and the mole people wars and stuff like that. There's definitely something for just about everyone in this show. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. And everyone should know number 6.
この想いを消してしまうにはまだ人生長いでしょうやり残してることをやり直してみたいから
I think I'm going to skip most of the explanation on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood because y'all have already probably seen it by now. I mean, this is... You see this everywhere. So all I gotta say is it's amazing. I don't have a whole hell of a lot of super mainstream shows that I think are just absolutely amazing, but this show is definitely worth a watch. I know it's a little long even for me, but it's just amazing. And if you haven't watched it, you gotta be living in a hole. If you're watching this series and haven't watched FMA Brotherhood, y'all are crazy. So another one you should all know is number 5.
Fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by daylight, never running from a real fight. She is the one named Sailor Moon. She will never feel like あなたの力になりたい
I made basically the same explanation as FMA Brotherhood. If you haven't watched it, what have you been doing with your life? Sailor Moon is Sailor Moon. Sailor freaking Moon. If you want my honest opinion, though, I think you should watch Crystal before you watch the original show. Just because Crystal is legitimately based on the manga word for, event for event. Meanwhile, the original spreads things a lot further out. You get the first season is 58 episodes. Meanwhile, the first season in Sailor Moon Crystal is 12. It's the exact same stuff. And Crystal is a lot more accurate. You get to see how they actually are, and you don't get this stupid stuff because Sailor, Uranus, and Neptune are lovers. They're not cousins, goddammit. Just saying. We're gonna throw that out there. Moving on now to number 4.
Reality slips far away, fiction comes alive, we start to play. Hope is no more behind the closed door as we drift away from where we were before. Hope and hopelessness become one, it's all meaningless, we've already begun. Yup, we are all one and the same, never opposites, we play the same game.
it was so hard not to put this at like number one. It was so hard, but the reason I didn't is because Danganronpa 2 never got an anime. That is legitimately the only reason it's not number one. And I know it's at number four, but Danganronpa 2 is one of my favorite storylines of the is my favorite storyline of the Danganronpa franchise, and one of my favorite storylines in any storm for any sort of media. It's absolutely amazing, and it really adds a lot to the story that you kind of don't see in the anime, because you watch the anime and you see Danganronpa 1, you get to see what happens prior to Danganronpa 1 with the Despair arc, and then you get to see what happens after Danganronpa 2 with the Future arc, and you don't get to see Danganronpa 2. That bugs me, and that's basically the only reason why Danganronpa is number 4. But it's a legitimate murder mystery type of thing where students are trapped in a school by some unknown means. They've forgotten basically everything that to them. They stepped onto campus and then just ended up locked in a high school and forced to kill each other. I don't want to say much more than that without giving stuff away, but it is one of my favorite franchises of all time. In my opinion, you should probably play the video games over the anime. You can even buy it on Steam. It's on the Steam store. I own all of them for the PlayStation 4, though. There's also Ultra Despair Girls that you also miss in that series as well, which is a lot different than the previous and next Danganronpa game. So, definitely worth a playthrough or a watch, in my opinion. But it is very difficult to get the entire gist of it without playing Danganronpa 2, because there are a lot of references in Danganronpa 3, the anime, to what happens in Danganronpa 2. Even in the Despair volume, they kind of give the foreshadowing hints of things that happen in Danganronpa 2 that you won't understand and won't pick up on without playing the game itself, or at least watching someone play it on YouTube, which I'd be happy to. If you want me to, you should comment in the comment section down below. I'd love to play it for the 27th time. Okay, so moving on now to number 3. So this one also kind of has an unfair advantage because of it being a movie, but it is by far the best anime movie of all time. And I mean that legitimately. Wolf Children was number 17, right? And that was my favorite for a long time. This is number 3. This anime movie is by far the best animated movie, best movie in my opinion of all time. And it's hard for me to say it is going to be for everybody else, but a lot of people that I know like this show a lot, and it's about a guy who basically bullied this young deaf girl, almost deaf girl basically, because she can't hear properly, like without hearing aids and whatnot. And that happened when they were kids, and he gets the full brunt of the blame for it, and his friends that were also picking on Shoko basically put all the blame on him and label him a bully, and then he, for the rest of his life, basically, at least to the point where we are in high school later on in the show, is labeled as a bully and has no friends, you know. So both him and Shoko are basically on the brink of suicide. Shoko's constantly bullied for the fact that she can't hear very well or at all, and he's bullied for the fact that he bullied her. And that's basically where the story begins, and we kind of see the development as he tries to make up for the fact that he was a bully and trying to become friends with Shoko over the course of the movie. And a large part of this is the bullying and the suicide, which if you didn't already know based on my vlogs and stuff, is something that I am well familiar with. Whether it be in real life, over the internet, whatever. Both of those things I have very well versed in. And I gotta say, it makes me cry every single time I watch it. It's rough. It's rough to watch. Even just the opening scene. So, in my opinion, though, not only should you watch it because it's actually a really, really good visual representation of everything that happens in this kind of scenario, but one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that you should do is watch it subbed. While the dubbed is good, they didn't really quite give off the impression of Shoko not being able to talk properly in the dub. Because I watched both. Some of my acquaintances are not really sub watchers. I know, lame, right? Sub master race, but the dub doesn't really do a very good job of it. In the sub, the words are a lot more slurred together. You can't really hear them very well. And the whole moon comment, which you guys who have seen it already know, the moon comment in doesn't work in English. It doesn't work at all in English because the words don't sound similar to what she was actually trying to say. But in the sub, it actually sounds like moon. So you kind of get where I'm going at with that one. But if you haven't watched that one already, it's a movie. It doesn't take a whole hell of a lot of time. It's, in my opinion, by far the best anime movie of all time. It came out at the same time as Your Name, which for whatever reason, Your Name was more popular. And in my opinion, that's not even close to the case. A Silent Voice was way better than Your Name, in my opinion. Leaps and bounds. So we're going to move on to the big number 2.
透き通る夢を見ていた柔らかい永遠風のようなかすかな声が
I mean, how could you not expect Clannad to be on this list? Because it was hard between this one and number 1 because number 1 has an unfair advantage in my opinion. But number 2, Clannad, has the best second season of anything. Well, the Clannad After Story is the number 1 highly rated anime of all time on my anime list. By far. And one of the most watched. And it's something that whether or not you like romance anime, it's gonna get you. The first season is kind of the introduction to the romance between the main female lead and the main character. The first season kind of goes through their high school life together and kind of develops this huge connection. But the second season is as it says, the after story. After they go out together and after their relationship begins to escalate to the point of potential marriage. That is where the story becomes one of the best, the single best set of 24 episodes of any anime out there, in my opinion. It is by far the best single season of anime ever. By far. And if you haven't watched Clannad for whatever reason, oh, I don't like romance anime, oh, I don't like high school anime, whatever it might be, you should watch it anyway. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It is rough. I've been wanting to play the visual novel that it is based on, but it's only available for PC. Oh well, you know. but if you have not watched Clannad, do it right now. I don't know what you're waiting for. And then we're on to number 1. This is going to take a while with all the series that I got to put back to back with the intros, but let's just start it.
何を抱きしめる欲望の陰で痛みにまみれた理全く君は花がいい玄関前ですぐに気づいてさ鼻息あらんげふがふがローカスタコラかけてくれんだ今夜は君の代行
Yeah, all of that shit. This is what I'm talking about with the unfair advantage. How can I possibly not put that at number 1? Not only did it, if you guys have watched my channel, you guys know that Fate Grand Order, I played it on here. There's a movie on it. I didn't put that as one of the openings. I only put the 50 billion different series first openings, but like, how can you not put the entire Fate franchise at number 1? Because they have like 50 billion different shows. It's not even fair. Like, it really isn't. That's the problem with number 1. Do any of the individual shows beat basically any of my top 12? No, probably not. Really, honest to God. They're fantastic. But I wouldn't rate Fate Zero, Fate Stay Night, Fate Apocrypha, Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feel, Fate Stay Night UBW over Clannad, Silent Voice, Danganronpa, Sailor Moon, FMA Brotherhood. Maybe over From the New World and Nagiasu and the rest of them. Maybe I would put Fate Zero there. And Heaven's Feel, I'll have to debate on. The first episode, the first movie was really freaking good. So that potentially that one could also fit up there. And Fate Apocrypha will probably be below Steins Gate at number 12. But all of them combined, I mean, you take all of those that are in the top like 20 and you put them into their one series. You know, it's like Love Live and Love Live Sunshine. Like they're one series. You know, would any of those individual ones be over the other ones? Probably not. But Fate Zero is amazing. Fate Stay Night is really good. Fate Stay Night UBW is amazing. Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feel so far has been amazing. Fate Apocrypha, insane. Fate Extra Last Encore, garbage. But I was really disappointed. Okay, I'm a huge Saber Nero fan. But I was really let down by Fate Extra Last Encore. But needless to say that as a franchise, as a series, it is definitely the best and most consistent franchise in terms of multiple series. So I couldn't put it anywhere other than number one. Yeah, but that's about it. So make sure you click that thumbs up button down below for me. Let me know your thoughts on my top 100 anime of all time now that you had it complete. Which ones do you guys think that I'm missing from my list? And which ones do you kind of not agree with that are on my list that you guys didn't think were as good? I'd like to know your thoughts. But without further ado, hit that subscribe button for future content. Go check out my other series out here on YouTube, and I'll see you all next time.